Imagine this, you're sitting across from her, the room dim, the air still, yet something inside you feels louder than anything she could ever say out loud. It's that sharp, cold sensation, like the moment before a storm breaks, when you realize the affection you thought you felt wasn't affection at all. It was hope wearing her face. And the truth you've avoided begins to whisper in your chest. She was never really yours, because she never really loved you. That's the part that stings the deepest. The idea that you were holding on to someone who was already gone long before you noticed the silence. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked, where we unravel the emotions most men are too afraid to face. If you find truth in the shadows I'm about to reveal, subscribe, because this is just the beginning. The thing about a woman who never loved you is that she doesn't break your heart in one violent moment. No. She does it in quiet ways, in subtle fractures. She lets you bleed slowly, invisibly, until one day you wake up realizing the version of her you loved existed only in your imagination. And it isn't your fault. Hope can be the cruelest storyteller. It shows you what you want to see, not what's in front of you. You ever notice how someone can be close enough to touch, and yet their soul feels miles away? That's what it feels like to love a woman who never loved you back. She's there in the room, but not in the moment. She hears your words, but not your meaning. You share your dreams, but she stays on the surface, offering responses as empty as abandoned buildings. And the worst part? You convince yourself it's enough. You tell yourself she's just tired, or stressed, or distracted. You come up with reasons to fill the empty spaces she never tried to fill. You create excuses for her lack of warmth because the truth feels too heavy to hold. After all, admitting she never loved you isn't just painful. It's humiliating. It feels like standing in front of a mirror and seeing every insecurity reflected back at you in her indifference. There's a darkness in that realization. Not an evil darkness, but the kind that teaches you. A darkness that forces you to grow up emotionally. Because when a woman never loved you, her silence becomes a teacher. Her distance becomes a message. Her coldness becomes a mirror showing you the parts of yourself you tried to hide. And maybe you remember the small moments, the ones that felt off, the way she pulled away when you reached for her hand, the way her eyes never lingered on you the way your eyes lingered on her, the way she kissed you like she was completing a task, not touching a soul. Every instinct in you whispered something wasn't right. But desire is good at drowning instincts. You kept giving. She kept taking. You kept hoping. She kept drifting. And you told yourself that patience was love, when really patience was self-sacrifice dressed as devotion. You weren't waiting for her. You were waiting for the version of her that lived in your heart, not the one standing in front of you. And what cuts the deepest is that she didn't have to hurt you intentionally. She didn't have to lie. She didn't have to cheat. A woman who never loved you doesn't need to destroy you with actions. Her absence is enough. Her emotional vacancy speaks louder than betrayal ever could. Because when someone doesn't love you, their presence feels like abandonment in slow motion. You start feeling like you're loving for two people, like you're carrying the weight of connection on your own, like you're pouring emotion into a container with a hole at the bottom. No matter how much you pour, it never fills. And deep down, you feel it. Her love was never missing. It was never there. There comes a moment, a quiet, devastating moment, when you stop trying to convince yourself that she cared. It doesn't happen with tears or screaming. It happens in stillness. It happens when you finally see reality without the filter of longing, and the truth hits you with the force of a memory you tried to bury. You realize that love isn't supposed to feel like you're begging for crumbs. It isn't supposed to feel like you're auditioning for a role she already decided you'd never get. And the more you replay the past, the more the signs become impossible to ignore. It's like watching an old movie with new eyes. You start catching the moments you once overlooked. The way her affection always felt conditional. The way her mood decided the entire emotional climate of the relationship. The way you felt like you were constantly trying to prove you were worthy, even though love shouldn't need proof. There's a certain ache that comes from loving someone who never let you in emotionally. You didn't notice it at first. You thought you were being supportive, patient, understanding. But now, when you look back, you see that every time you opened your heart, she closed hers a little more. Every time you tried to get closer, she took a step back. You thought you were building something. She was just standing there, letting you build alone. And here's the brutal part. She didn't pretend to love you because she enjoyed the attention. She pretended because it was convenient, because your love filled her empty spaces temporarily, because having someone care about her made her feel valuable, even if she couldn't return that feeling. You weren't her partner. You were her emotional placeholder. You felt it in the way she responded to your vulnerability like it was a burden. You felt it in the way she only softened when she needed something. You felt it in the way your happiness was optional, but hers was mandatory. Deep down, you sensed it. You sensed you were giving her a version of love she didn't even want to understand. And as painful as it is, there's freedom in finally seeing this. There's power in recognizing the difference between love and attachment, between desire and delusion. A woman who never loved you teaches you something no happy relationship ever could, that your heart is worth more than the places you've allowed it to break. You start realizing that her emotional distance wasn't mysterious. It was intentional. Her inconsistency wasn't accidental. It was her true nature surfacing. Her lack of effort wasn't stress or distraction. It was her soul telling you the truth long before your mind was willing to accept it. And once you accept that truth, something inside you shifts. You stop chasing. You stop questioning your worth. You stop rewriting the story just to make her look like the person you wanted her to be. You begin to understand that the love you were offering wasn't lost. It was misplaced. It was overflowing into someone who couldn't hold it, someone who didn't want to. And that's when the healing begins. Not when she apologizes, not when she regrets it, not when she comes back with excuses. Healing begins the moment you finally whisper to yourself, "She never loved me, and that has nothing to do with my value." There's a strange quiet that settles in your chest once you finally stop chasing answers from someone who was never willing to give you the truth. It feels like walking out of a crowded room after realizing you were the only one speaking. You start to notice how peaceful it is when you no longer have to negotiate with someone for the bare minimum. How light you feel when you stop begging for the kind of love that should have been given freely. That emptiness she left behind slowly begins to feel less like a wound, and more like an open space you finally get to reclaim. And at some point, you look back and understand something you couldn't see before. Loving her was never the mistake, but loving her more than she was capable of loving you was. You tried to hold together a bond that was never truly two-sided. You tried to water a connection where only one person had roots. You were loyal to a feeling she didn't even bother to experience. It's not that she was evil or heartless. Most of the time, it's simpler than that. She didn't love you because her heart was already numb, or guarded, or indifferent. Some women don't know how to love deeply because they've never been willing to risk being vulnerable, so they take your love, but they never step into it. They stand on the edge of intimacy like it's a cliff, terrified of falling, so they let you be the only one who jumps. You became the emotional giver. She became the emotional ghost. And every time you tried to touch her soul, your hands closed around fog. And you know what hurts the most? The realization that the signs were there from the beginning. Not dramatic signs, not explosive arguments, just small, consistent patterns that painted the truth. You felt the distance in her tone, in her delayed replies, in the way her eyes never glowed for you the way yours did for her. You saw how she lit up around other people but dimmed around you. You noticed how she could spend hours scrolling through her phone but only gave you minutes of her attention, like you were a chore on her daily to-do list. But you ignored it. Not because you were naive, but because you cared. Because you wanted to believe that love could grow in a place where it never truly existed. Because men with deep hearts often hold on the longest. And that's why this truth hits you so hard. She didn't break you. You broke yourself trying to keep her. You sacrificed your peace for her comfort. You lowered your standards for her inconsistency. You carried both sides of the relationship until your shoulders collapsed under the weight of pretending everything was okay. But here's the shift. The moment your life begins to change. When you finally say, "She never loved me," you stop waiting for closure from her. You stop hoping for the message that never comes. You stop replaying memories trying to find the moment everything went wrong. Because nothing went wrong. She simply didn't feel what you felt. And that painful simplicity sets you free. Because now, for the first time, you can see your worth without seeing her. You can feel your strength without needing her validation. You can imagine a future where you're not starving for affection while pretending to be full. And slowly, the pieces of you that she overlooked begin to glow again. The parts she ignored come back to life. The version of you that loved deeply, openly, fearlessly doesn't disappear. It evolves. It gets smarter. It gets stronger. It learns what real love should feel like and what it should never cost you. There's a moment, subtle, nearly invisible, when your heart finally exhales, when the constant tightness you carried for months begins to release its grip. It happens after the truth settles in, after the denial fades, after the emotional fog finally lifts. You wake up one day and realize you haven't thought about her in the same painful way. Her absence doesn't echo the way it used to. The memories don't burn, they simply pass. And that's when you understand the power of seeing reality without the illusions your heart once painted. You begin to understand that her inability to love you was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of her capacity. Some hearts are too small to hold what you offered. Some minds are too cold to understand the warmth you gave. Some souls are too guarded to recognize the man who stood right in front of them, offering what they claimed they always wanted. And as you step farther away from her emotional shadow, you start to see yourself differently. You notice the strength it took to keep loving someone who gave you so little. You realize the resilience buried inside you, the resilience to stay loyal, to try, to care, even when the love was one-sided. That kind of dedication isn't weakness. It isn't desperation. It's proof that your heart has depth, more depth than she ever knew how to handle. And when you finally stop blaming yourself, something shifts. You stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And you start asking, why did I allow someone who gave me so little to have so much of me? That's when your healing becomes transformation. Because a man who has been broken by the wrong woman can become unstoppable once he realizes the problem wasn't him. It was the emotional emptiness he tried to fix in her. You begin to reclaim parts of yourself she stepped over without noticing. The laughter you muted, the confidence you softened, the dreams you delayed, the edges you rounded off so she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. You pick them up again, one by one, like pieces of a man you were always meant to be. A man who doesn't beg for love. A man who doesn't chase half-hearted affection. A man who understands that real love flows. It doesn't need to be forced out of someone emotionally unavailable. And maybe, in the quiet moments, you'll remember how heavy it felt when you were trying to hold on to her. You'll remember the sleepless nights, the unanswered messages, the emotional distance she wrapped herself in like armor. You'll remember how small you felt trying to reach someone who didn't want to be reached. But you'll also feel something else. Gratitude. Gratitude not for the pain she caused, but for the clarity she gave you. Because losing someone who never loved you isn't a loss. It's freedom disguised as heartbreak. And one day when you meet someone who actually sees you, someone who listens, who gives, who tries, you'll finally understand the difference. You'll feel what it's like to love without fear, to be chosen without conditions, to be valued without having to shrink. And you'll look back and realize that what you once called love was nothing more than your heart clinging to potential. Because the truth is simple and brutal. If she never loved you, her leaving wasn't the ending. It was the beginning. The beginning of the man you were always capable of becoming. There's a certain clarity that comes only after you've walked through the kind of emotional darkness she left you in. It's the clarity that arrives when the dust has finally settled, when your heart has stopped shaking, when the ache no longer feels like a wound but like a memory you've learned to carry without bleeding. It's the moment when you finally understand that love, and the absence of it, shapes a man in ways nothing else can. You start to see how much you were bending yourself just to keep her from slipping away, how many times you suppressed your needs because you didn't want to scare her off, how often you accepted her silence as an answer, her distance as a phase, her coldness as stress. You didn't want to believe that the truth was simpler than all your excuses. She didn't love you, and she didn't want to. But now, with distance, the puzzle pieces fall into place. You notice how her affection appeared and disappeared like a flickering light, never steady, never reliable. You realize how she seemed fully present only when it benefited her, only when she needed validation, attention, comfort, or ego. Her love was conditional, seasonal, transactional, and you deserved more than that. You always did. And as the truth unfolds, it doesn't crush you anymore. It frees you. Because you start to understand that real love doesn't feel like constant confusion. Real love doesn't make you question your worth. Real love doesn't make you beg for emotional crumbs. Real love doesn't require you to shrink, to chase, or to prove anything. And the more honest you become with yourself, the more you recognize that the version of her you fell for wasn't who she actually was. You were attached to the potential, to the occasional moments of warmth that faded as quickly as they appeared. You were in love with fragments, not the whole person, and fragments were never enough to build a future. But here's the part men rarely acknowledge, yet it's the part that changes everything. Her inability to love you was not a rejection of you. It was a reflection of her own emotional limits. The cage wasn't around your heart, it was around hers. You were trying to love someone who had barred the doors long before you arrived. And if she couldn't offer love to herself, how could she ever offer it to you? Now something inside you begins to rise. Not anger, not bitterness, just truth. A calm truth that settles into your bones like a reminder of what you survived. And you begin to transform, not dramatically, but quietly, steadily, from the inside out. You become a man who no longer chases the bare minimum. A man who no longer sees his value through someone else's indifference. A man who no longer gives everything to a woman who gives nothing. And the beautiful thing is, you don't just heal, you evolve. You don't just move on, you rise. You don't just let go, you reclaim your power. And the next time your heart chooses someone, it won't be because you're trying to prove your worth. It won't be because you're trying to fix someone. It won't be because you're holding on to potential. It will be because the love is real, mutual, present, alive. And when that love arrives, you'll know. Because it won't feel like a battle. It won't feel like guessing. It won't feel like begging for space in someone's heart. It will feel like home. There's a quiet strength you begin to carry once you finally understand the truth. You were never unlovable. You were simply loving the wrong woman. And that realization doesn't come with fireworks or dramatic revelations. It comes with a slow, steady awakening. A shift in how you view yourself. A soft but powerful rebirth of your dignity. It's the moment when you stop measuring your worth by the way she treated you, and start measuring it by the man you've become because of what you survived. You see, heartbreak from a woman who never loved you is unique. It's not the kind that shatters you suddenly. It drains you quietly, almost gently, like water leaking from a cracked glass. You don't realize how empty you're becoming until you're nearly hollow. But here's the beauty. Once the glass is empty, you can finally refill it on your own terms. You can choose who pours into you. You can choose who you allow near the deepest parts of your heart. And as you rise from this experience, something remarkable happens. You start demanding more. Not from others, from yourself. You stop accepting half-hearted love. You stop tolerating emotional laziness. You stop overextending yourself for people who don't meet you halfway. You develop a new standard, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect born from pain. And suddenly, you notice that her memory no longer holds authority over your emotions. The ache that once felt unbearable becomes manageable. The nights that once felt endless become peaceful. Her name no longer tightens your chest. Her absence no longer shakes your confidence. She stops being a wound and becomes a chapter, a lesson, a turning point. Because now you understand something you couldn't grasp when you were in the middle of the storm. Losing someone who never loved you is not a loss. It's a correction. It's your life, pulling you away from a dead end. It's the universe clearing space for something far more aligned with who you are becoming. And one day, without even realizing when it happened, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the temporary peace you tried to create with her, not the forced calm of pretending everything was fine, but real peace. The kind that settles on your shoulders like warm sunlight. The kind that whispers, "You made it." And when you eventually meet a woman who actually cares, really cares, you'll feel the difference instantly. Her presence won't drain you. Her attention won't confuse you. Her affection won't disappear without warning. She won't make you question yourself. She won't hold her love hostage. She won't make you feel like you're asking for too much just by wanting to be valued. Instead, she'll meet you where you are. She'll make effort feel effortless. She'll love you in ways you didn't know you were missing. She'll make you realize how unnatural your last relationship truly was. And you'll look back at the version of you who begged for love from someone who had none to give. And you'll feel compassion for him. Because he didn't know yet. He didn't know he was worthy of more. He didn't know he was strong enough to walk away. He didn't know heartbreak could be the very force that shapes him into the man he was destined to become. But now, you know. So this is where your story turns. Not when she left, not when she stopped loving, because she never did. Your story turns now, in this moment, when you finally reclaim your heart from the places it didn't belong. If her love never existed, then her absence can't hurt you anymore. And that truth, that quiet, steady truth, is what sets you free.